Howdy folks, and welcome back once again to Home with the Gnome. And today, where's the camera? Oh, it's over there. And today, you wouldn't believe I do this for a living. And today, just for a change, we're going to be cooking something simple, cheap, effective, and hopefully delicious. This is, well, I'm not entirely sure what Sam the Cooking Guy called it, although I'm not sticking religiously to his recipe. I am adding a few touches of my own. I like to call it the Big Hash Brown. Let's take a look at the ingredients. Right, the ingredients are fairly simple. Over here, what looks like a big bowl of cheese is in fact a big bowl of grated potato. Yes, I realise they're turning slightly brown, don't worry, that's just what happens to potato once it's been cut open and left exposed to the air for just a couple of minutes. That's basically the starch in the potato. That's absolutely fine, don't worry. Over here we do have some cheese. That is some grated Swiss Gruyere. Over here we have some diced yellow bell pepper, 4 eggs, whisked. And over here, the secret ingredient. That is Mexican chorizo. Very, very different from Spanish or Portuguese chorizo, which is an actual solid sausage. You can slice it up and it retains its shape. The Mexican chorizo, which by the way is a real bugger to get a hold of in this country, is more like raw sausage meat. Once you remove it from the skin, it's basically paste, but it's still got that same lovely chorizo-y flavour. So, let's introduce all these. Oh, and I can't forget the final ingredient, 1 beer. It's not actually going into the meal, but I'm cooking, so I deserve a beer. And you do too. Right, let's get started. First thing you're going to do is whack those grated potatoes, a la the Big Hash Brown, right into a lightly oiled pan. Now, this is what's going to take the longest time. Potatoes have a very high water content. We're basically going to be frying these until they're browned on both sides. We're going to be flipping it at regular intervals. But because potatoes have such a high water content, this is going to take quite some time. Possibly 10-15 minutes. Slightly less than 10 minutes later, that's the potato cooked off on one side. I've just flipped it over and now it's going to start browning off on the other side. And while that's busy, I'm going to start getting the chorizo ready. And if that sounds complicated, don't worry, it's just a simple case of removing the skin. And that is what Mexican chorizo looks like. As you can see, completely different from Spanish or Portuguese chorizo. It's basically very, well, it's just like raw sausage meat basically. And that's perfect, because that means it's going to mix in perfectly with the grated potatoes. Grated potatoes, which are basically just about ready. So, you know, I'm going to make a little space in the pan, like so, just for the initial application of the chorizo. And there it goes. Plenty of it, don't be shy. Raking it up, which is more difficult than it sounds when you're trying to ensure that your camera phone stays in the right place and you're doing this one-handed. Once that's started to brown off, which doesn't take long at all, as you can see, I'm going to mix that in with the grated potatoes. If you want to add any of your own spices at this point, feel free. I've added some salt for seasoning, and I'm also going to toss in some hot paprika. Not a lot, it doesn't need a huge amount. There's plenty of flavour in there from the chorizo. And we're going to mix that in. Next, cheese. Ideally, you want your cheese at room temperature before you add it, because it's just going to take that much longer to melt. But if your pan's sufficiently hot, this isn't going to take too long at all. As soon as the cheese has started to melt, that is when you're going to add the final, well, not the final ingredient, the final solid ingredient, the bell peppers. Alright, the cheese has melted nicely, in with the peppers. And I don't really want to cook the peppers, I want them al dente, I want them nice and crunchy to the taste. So they're going to get 30 seconds, and then, and this is just so good, I wish you could smell what this smells like. This is where things differ radically from the way Sam the cooking guy did this and the way I'm going to do it. Because I'm essentially basically turning this whole thing into a big old hash brown omelette. With the addition of 4 whisked eggs. And at this point, it's basically going to be done in 30 seconds or less. Just make sure that egg cooks off all over. And this will be way easier if I could use 2 hands to actually control the pan as well. So camera off for now, and we'll be back when it's ready to serve. And there, by God, it is. Doesn't look particularly attractive, I have to admit, but oh, unfortunately no Portuguese judge this time. She's busy live streaming, so I'm going to have a bit. Oh, that smells amazing. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That is good. That is really good. Yeah. It's also very hot. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to call this. I've just realised my hand's in frame. You wouldn't believe I do this for a living. I think I'm going to call that my big breakfast hash brown, despite the fact I'm actually having this at 8 PM. So I'm going to get some of that plated up, take it upstairs to the Portuguese judge. She's busy live streaming. She hasn't actually had anything to eat today. And I'm sure that's going to be very much appreciated. And I hope you've enjoyed it too. It's cheap, it's cheerful. I admit, depending on where you are, the Mexican chorizo can be quite difficult to source. But you don't have to use Mexican chorizo. It does add a certain kick to the flavour that you probably won't be able to get anywhere else. But any other kind of spicy sausage is absolutely going to be suitable for this, providing it's not solid and is actually more akin to sausage meat when you remove the skin. So that's my big breakfast hash brown. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed eating it. Take care, folks.